I spent $27,000 supporting my boyfriend, who swore he would be financially stable soon, but kept making terrible decisions and still thinks I should give him another chance. My boyfriend and I started dating in March of 2016. He was the biggest optimist I'd ever met and had lived a comfortable life as the only child of divorced parents who doted on him. We both had our own places and jobs that more than covered our expenses. He splurged on a luxury sports car, a high-end gaming setup, and a purebred dog, which will be relevant later. He was still in school, while I had graduated the year before and started my first real job. Life was great, and for the first 6 months, I was the happiest I had ever been. Then, in the first week of February 2017, he was wrongfully fired. A new manager had come in, clearly looking to replace his entire shift with his own people, and waited until after the holiday season to start cutting them loose. My boyfriend filed for unemployment, won his case, and started receiving benefits. He decided to focus on school full-time instead of job hunting. That's when the cracks began to show. He was supposed to graduate that June, but he failed a class and had to stay for summer courses. By July, his savings had dried up. He could either pay for his car and insurance or rent, not both. His lease was up at the end of the month, so I told him I'd cover rent, and he could move in with me to finish school. Then, just weeks before his new graduation date, he found out he was one elective short and had to stay for another semester. That's when I put my foot down. He needed to get a job. I was willing to support him for a little while, but half a year? No way. At the end of August, he landed a job as a financial consultant for a prestigious company. The catch? It was commission only. Being the optimist he was, he fell for his manager's sales pitch about unlimited income potential. I paid for the certification test he needed, and he started trying to build a client base from scratch. He made nothing. A couple of small deals here and there, maybe $800 one month, then nothing for weeks. He worked long hours, but without family connections or an established network, getting clients was nearly impossible. By October, we had to downsize from my modern high-rise apartment to a rundown rental on the outskirts of town. I covered the security deposit and the double rent overlap, which set me back over $4,000. By December, my savings was practically gone, and I had to cash out part of an investment account, which came with a penalty, just to keep us afloat. By January, I had less than $500 left in savings and nothing left to pull from. I had spent nearly $20,000 since summer keeping us both afloat. His job required him to spend money, taking clients to coffee, lunch, and networking events. His dog and mine had expenses. And since he wasn't contributing financially, I expected him to at least handle the majority of the housework as a way of pulling his weight. But he didn't. Not once. Every time we fought about money or chores, he repeated the same scripted optimism. It'll turn around soon. Everyone struggles at first. Success is just around the corner. Once I make it, we'll be set for life. I had heard it 100 times before. 2 weeks before Valentine's Day, we had the same fight again. This time, I snapped. I told him I was done with the motivational speeches, he needed to do something. I grabbed my keys and stormed out, thinking about who I could text for a couch to crash on. Then it hit me, why should I be the one sleeping on a couch when I pay for everything? I turned the car around, walked back inside, and told him he had 10 days to pack his things and leave. He moved back in with his dad. On Valentine's morning, I sat with my dog, drank my coffee, and returned his gifts online. We started hanging out again in February of this year, and for a while, it seemed like things were finally looking up for him. His business had picked up just enough that he was thinking about getting his own place. I told him he could move back in with me, but if we couldn't split expenses evenly at first, he needed to step up. That meant handling the bulk of the chores and strictly following a budget. At first, it was fine. By May, it wasn't. He had stopped doing chores altogether, and I was back to paying 100% of his and his dog's living expenses. Then, he came to me with an insane request. He was about to miss his quarterly quota and asked if I could sign up for a policy, then cancel it after the quarter ended so I'd be reimbursed. I lost it. I work in finance. I can't afford to commit fraud just to boost his commission numbers. I told him I'd already sacrificed enough for him, and he wasn't taking my integrity down with him, too. Bonus, the friend he did convince to do this sketchy scheme still hasn't been reimbursed. It's been 6 months. We had a huge fight over it, and something must have finally clicked for him because he actually started pulling his weight around the house. That, at least, has stuck. But money? Still an absolute mess. His expensive car was draining him every single month. Then, in June, he finally landed a big contract and was able to pay his half of the rent for the first time. He even offered to cover all of July's rent, which he did. By the second week of July, he was broke again. And at the last minute, he told me he couldn't pay August rent. I had to scramble to pull together the money on short notice. Same with groceries. I am so sick of this. I have an amazing job for my age. I paid off my student loans in under a year, and I own my car outright. Yet, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, not because of my own spending habits, but because I'm carrying him. There's always something. Even when it's a legit reason, it still means he can't cover his share. It's been a year, and he hasn't made even the smallest improvement in his financial situation. His job is built for rich kids with trust funds, people who can afford to be this broke while they build a client base. I admire his optimism, but he's not the one suffering for it. I am. I've enabled him for far too long. After our latest fight about money, it finally hit me. He is too immature for this job. He complains about clients who spend all their money on vacations, luxury cars, and toys instead of buying a policy from him. Meanwhile, he blew his own money on a car and a gaming PC when he had a stable paycheck. He has no problem going in circles with me during every fight, but he won't ask his parents for help. Why? Because that would be awkward. Because he doesn't want to lose his dad's respect. What about my respect? What about my boundaries? Last night, I told him I wasn't renewing the lease and that I was moving out on my own. He panicked. He followed me around the house, asking the same questions he's asked in every fight. How do you feel about me? What about us? Where will I go? What will it take for you to let me come with you? These are his questions to answer, because it's his life. I refused to go through it all again and just went to bed. He stood in the doorway and threw out that stupid Marilyn Monroe quote about how if you can't handle someone at their worst, you don't deserve them at their best. I told him he was totally allowed to feel that way and walked away. He slept on the couch that night. And honestly, I can't believe he feels abandoned after everything I've done for him. He doesn't understand how insulting it is to try and pay his half of rent with motivational speeches about success and struggle. I've told him this. Every fight. Yet he still doesn't listen. But why would he? I haven't made myself worthy of respect. I've been his financial doormat. I haven't enforced my own boundaries. And at this point, I think he's just using me as a safety net. He knows I won't let him or his dog go hungry, so he doesn't even try to take responsibility for food. He's so blinded by his own optimism that he constantly overpromises and underdelivers. He tells me a client is definitely going to buy a high-end policy, then they go for the bare minimum, and suddenly, he can't pay rent. He brags about how many connections he made at a networking event, then only 3 people actually call him back, and now he needs money to take them out. He swears he's about to lock in a huge corporate contract with 50% enrollment, then the final number is 8%, and now he can't even afford dog food this week. I used to think he was lying to me, but now I see that he's lying to himself. He hasn't matured at all, hasn't grounded his expectations in reality, because I've been shielding him from it. And that's why I don't trust him to give me a realistic timeline for when he'll finally be financially stable. Even if he did, he'd probably be wrong about that too. Now that I've stopped being his Atlas, holding up his world, he's panicking. The worst part? He didn't take me seriously until I finally put my foot down, something I should have done from the start. And the irony isn't lost on me. He's a broke financial advisor. I missed the first few months of this relationship, back when his job hid how financially immature he really was. If I had seen it back then, maybe I could have actually taught him something that stuck. Instead, I spent all my energy covering for him, making excuses, and playing the role of his second mother. I miss going out to nice dinners without worrying about paying for 2 people. I miss game nights and concerts without guilt. I miss the feeling I had a month after meeting him, when I was so sure I was going to marry him. No? I don't know. I love him. But that love doesn't feel like an inner flame anymore. It feels like a burden. And maybe this is just my own fatal optimism talking, but I still think that guy, the one I fell for, is buried in there somewhere. He just needs to grow up and learn his own lessons. I can't even put into words how badly I want that version of him back. Writing this is making me tear up. I let him move back in this year because, according to him, he only needed a few more months to get stable. And I wanted that so badly because I wanted us to finally be able to just live our lives together without this constant financial strain. But my hope is hurting me, just like it's hurting him. Can our relationship survive now that I'm finally taking steps to make sure it doesn't financially destroy me? Or am I just being naive for thinking anything will ever change? Will he just move back in with his dad and make him his new enabler instead? What am I doing wrong that's keeping him from actually hearing me? Commenter 1. No, you couldn't have. People have to want to learn for lessons to stick. I get why you're struggling to walk away. His strengths and weaknesses are so tightly intertwined. But if you stay, you're just making the same mistake he is, doubling down on a bad decision because you think a little more time and effort will magically turn things around. You can't. And neither can he. Stop feeding into the sunk cost fallacy and walk away. Op. Asterisk, this is so true. I grew up in an abusive home, so when I met him, his positivity was like a bright light in my life. Now, it's burning me. You're right. I am making the same mistake. I know what I have to do. It's going to suck, but I'm worth it. At least to myself. Asterisk. Commenter 2. There's no hope. You can't change anyone but yourself. He's the only one who can change himself, and instead of doing that, he's doubling down on a mindset that has already failed. Why hasn't he gotten another job? Even if he won't quit this dream, he could at least get a second job, something that actually pays. Op. Asterisk, he still has mandatory office hours during the day, unpaid, of course, and it infuriates me that they don't compensate him for that. He says he can't get a second job because he's constantly meeting clients before and after traditional work hours. And even if he wanted to Uber, he can't. His fancy car is on the restricted list. And there's no way he's taking mine too. Asterisk. I hate his stupid car so much. It's a symbol of his terrible financial decisions, proof that even when he had money, he still didn't use it wisely. And to this day, he's still clinging to it. Oh, and did I mention? He hasn't paid taxes on it. Or registered it. Because, of course, he doesn't have the money. Not sure who's going to end up paying for that inevitable ticket. But it sure as hell won't be me. Update. A lot has happened since my last post. I guess I'll go through it step by step, since right now, I'm just taking things moment to moment. After I wrote that last update, I decided to fully cut him off. I changed the Wi-Fi password. Froze the credit card I had given him. Applied to close our joint accounts. Threw out every single gift I had ever given him. We had been planning to go to a nerd convention over Labor Day weekend. I had budgeted for both of us to go over a year ago. I told him he couldn't come unless he covered his half of the hotel and tickets, $600. Not sure why I even gave him that option instead of just shutting it down completely. Shouldn't have played any games. But honestly, I'm glad I did. Because this man had the audacity to text me that he'd have $1,000 for me by the end of August. In writing. I was floored. Suddenly, he could come up with money for a weekend of partying and a chance to pull me back in? I told him fine, but that money would be going toward August bills. And before he spent a dime on luxuries like out-of-state vacations, he could start paying back the $27,000 he owed me for supporting him over the last year. He never responded. That night, he slept on the couch. Again. That was Friday. Saturday. He left the house around 9 a.m. with his dog, leaving all his stuff behind. I piled all of his and his dog's belongings under his desk. Took down and got rid of every picture of him in the house. Blocked him everywhere except Facebook and text. Went to 2 rental house showings, fell in love with one. The landlord let me put down a deposit that same day. Took my dog on long walks, spent extra time at the dog park, and just enjoyed my day. Vented, drank wine through Twizzlers with my next-door neighbor and her boyfriend. He never came back that night. Sunday. Spent the day working on my cosplays and outfits for the convention. Goofed off with my neighbor. Played with my dog. It was lovely. I kept waiting for some wave of sadness or regret to hit me. But it never did. He had been gone for 24 hours, and his name wasn't on the lease. So I texted him. Your claim to residency is gone. You need to pick up your things. Give me 24 hours notice. He said he'd come that night. I replied, 24 hours notice. He agreed to Monday evening. Monday. He showed up in his dad's truck, picked up his things, and handed me back the key. A few hours later, he added Say Something by A Great Big World to our shared YouTube playlist. I added Gravity by Sarah Bareilles and Too Good by Drake, then removed his access to the playlist. Middle school communication at its finest. Wednesday. His best friend texted me like nothing had happened. Thursday. I texted my ex, asking when I could expect his check in the mail. He didn't respond. Friday morning. I emailed him. At this point, it seemed like he had gone completely no contact with me. Saturday. I sent one last email, basically stating as much. A day later, he asked me to meet for coffee. Sunday night. We met up. He never mentioned repayment. Instead, we talked about our feelings. And, unsurprisingly, we both felt the same way. Betrayed. Abandoned. Hurt. Distrustful of each other. Then he dropped this on me. He felt that I had lied when I said I was okay supporting him. And then, the kicker, he insinuated that if I had really believed in us, I wouldn't want repayment. Because, apparently, that meant I had loaned him money under the guise of love, and had set him up to fail. That was the moment I knew I was done. The realization hit me like a brick. He felt just as used as I did, all because I had finally cut him off financially. My stomach sank. I let him finish talking. Then we parted ways. Before leaving, he asked if he could stay in touch. I told him I needed a break. The next day, I emailed him about the $1,000 he had promised me and reminded him that he never brought up repayment at our last meeting. He didn't respond. For days. Then, on the exact day I was set to leave town for the convention, he finally replied. The money is on the way. Cool. So it could just sit in my mailbox for 5 days while I was out of state. Also, during this time, he was telling our mutual friends that we were just going through a rough patch. Meanwhile, my friends were finding him on Tinder in OKC. The convention. I partied my tail off the entire time. And when I got back, the check was sitting in an unpostmarked envelope in my mailbox. After I got back, I cashed the check and emailed him. Told him I had received it. Asked that he use snail mail for future payments instead of trespassing on my property when he knew I wouldn't be home. Honestly, I seriously wonder if he was looking for the spare key I had left with the dog sitter. So creepy. His response? A long, overly emotional email about how much he loves me and how he knows he screwed up. He claimed he's just too nice and that his need to help others makes him neglect himself. But don't worry, he's working on that. Right. It was the most ridiculous apology I have ever read. I was just so generous and selfless that I couldn't stop myself from draining you financially and emotionally. My bad. My reply. Asterisk, you broke my heart and my bank account. It's going to take a long time before either of them are fixed. And by then, I hope I won't be dumb enough to trust you with them a third time. I'll only be responding to emails about repayment. Otherwise, take care. Asterisk. His last email. Asterisk, if I could undo everything, I would. I love you, my name, more than anything. I should have done better. I should have fixed things before they got this bad. But I'll let you slip away, and that will be one of the biggest regrets of my life. I'm truly sorry. All I've ever wanted was for you to be happy. Asterisk. Moving on. I moved out of the house we shared and into a new place a few streets over. Packing, moving, and unpacking kept me distracted enough not to dwell on things. I threw away every single picture, every old gift, every last piece of him. Everything in my new home is mine now. And honestly, I feel like it hasn't even fully hit me that it's over. I thought I'd be devastated. And yeah, there were moments, especially at the convention, where I felt that twinge of loneliness. But mostly, I just feel embarrassed. I don't even feel the urge to check up on him. When I do see a picture of him, it just reminds me of how foolish and naive I was to think he was it for me. And now, I don't even trust my own feelings anymore. When I first met him, I knew we were meant to be. Like my name. Like a fact. Now, I meet new people. I have fun conversations. But the idea of trusting my gut again, acting on anything, feels impossible. Because last time, my instincts led me so far off track. But that's it. It's over. And life is moving forward, with or without me. Commenter 1. Asterisk, I remember your original post and wondering how this would play out. You handled this perfectly, and it's obvious you're in a much better place now that he's out of your life. Your writing even sounds happier. Keep moving forward. Just one step at a time. Asterisk. Up. Asterisk, thanks. It's surreal how fast you went from being my future to being just someone I used to know. The convention actually helped me reclaim the whole single thing again. That's the road I'm on now. Asterisk.